This episode of the Multiracialverse podcast is brought to you by Eviton Couture, a brand born from a powerful vision and a deep connection to heritage. Founded by Shinnecock brothers Jason Tech King and Wayon Moon Smith, Eviton represents resilience and pride. From handmade tie-dye to wellness-focused athletic wear, each piece is crafted with intention and positivity, smudged with sage for good vibes, and delivered to you with love. Join the Eviton family on their journey of empowerment and inspiration. Hit up Moon on Instagram at Eviton_KS. That is native spelled backwards _KS to view product and place an order. Eviton Couture. Feel the spirit of resilience in every stitch.
No, but what was driving me, I think, really just always feeling like if my dad and my parents really could come to this country, not speak the language, have so many barriers, and still make a decent life for themselves and for my siblings and I, then I have no excuse.
Yeah.
Like that's this constant thing. I need to just accomplish as much as I can, right?
Yeah.
My skill sets and my gifts and whatever else I have, I can do, big things. And it's almost like a wanting to make my parents proud. And feel like that's my way of giving back to them for all of it.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of the Multiracialverse podcast. This is our first full episode of 2025. We are so happy to be back. In this episode, we are thrilled to introduce Ana Ortega, a first-generation Mexican professional and a proud mother of 2 mixed-race children. Ana shares her experiences growing up in a traditional Mexican household in Los Angeles, where Spanish was the primary language. She recalls the cultural shift when her family moved to a new neighborhood in the suburbs, highlighting the differences in language and everyday experiences like the snacks her classmates brought to school. Ana's parents, who moved to the U.S. from Mexico, were dedicated to providing the best life for their children. Her father started his own business despite language barriers, instilling values of respect, humility, and the importance of education. Ana also discusses the challenges of adapting to an English-speaking environment and the differences in experiences between her and her siblings. Ana emphasizes the importance of not settling and finding inspiration from others who have walked similar paths. Despite initially aspiring to be a doctor, her life took different turns, leading her to explore various passions. Her story is one of continuous learning and adaptability. Join us as we delve into Ana's story, exploring the intersections of race, culture, and identity. This episode celebrates diversity, the strength found in adversity, and the beauty of authentic storytelling. Tune in for an inspiring conversation that highlights the richness of multiracial and multicultural experiences and the power of understanding and empathy in reshaping narratives about identity. Hey Ana, welcome to the Multiracialverse. How you doing? This is awesome. I'm so stoked to finally get to sit down with you and talk to you about many things. How are things going today?
Going well. I'll first start by saying thank you for inviting me. I know that we've been trying to make it happen for a while, so I'm glad we're finally getting the chance to sit down and chat.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Congratulations on not just creating a podcast, but creating like a really unique and cool space for people to share their stories and to have a voice. I think it's super important. So congratulations.
Oh yeah, thank you. No, I really, really appreciate that. That brings definitely much more meaning to doing this. So, and the reason why, I think you're like a perfect guest for this because you have a very dynamic background, and your story is inspirational. So let's start out with like little Ana. Like where was little Ana born, or where is your origin story, Ana?
Little Ana. So it's funny you say that because I have my vision board back here somewhere, and I have a picture of little Ana on it.
I think I see.
So let's see. My origin story. So I am Mexican. I come from, both of my parents are Mexican, actually. I am one of 4 kids. So I have an older sister. I'm the second oldest. I have my younger sister and my younger brother. So it was a busy household growing up. What else? Let's see.
Where was this at? Where were you living at the time where you were?
So my childhood originally started in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So we lived there for the first few years of my childhood. And then around like third grade, we moved to a different city, which is where we live now. It's still LA County, but it's kind of like a different world, I would say.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably where I started to notice a change in how my parents, were so used to being in LA where everyone spoke Spanish and my teachers spoke Spanish. And coming to this new city is where we first got that experience of there weren't as many people who spoke Spanish. So that's where we kind of had to dive into a different language and a different culture.
Oh, wow. And so your parents, were they from LA originally? Or
No. Okay. So my parents moved to the US, and they started their life in LA with family, and they liked it, but it wasn't where they wanted to raise a family.
Yeah.
And after living there for a few years, we ended up moving to a different city, and I think for them it was always about what's the best possible life that we can provide for our kids. And I'll say that my dad was the only working parent. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad had his own business. And, I think they did pretty well for themselves, considering that they came to this country, didn't speak the language, didn't have, an extensive educational background or anything. But they definitely provided me a childhood and a life that I would say nothing was missing.
Yeah.
Nothing was actually missing. We didn't have super fancy things or anything like that, but we did have all that we needed. I think now raising my own kids, I see a difference now. And, not that things were missing, but just the way that our lives were when I was a kid compared to what my kids have now.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. We talk about our kids later. So your parents, did they come as young adults, or were they already, your dad, what he was doing here for work, was he already doing that in Mexico?
No, he wasn't doing that in Mexico. Actually, they did come here when they were younger, and they lived with family to start out. So they had different jobs. I probably don't even know all of the different jobs my dad had, but he started in his trade, which is where he started his business when he came to the States. So that was something that he just learned by working with different people, and then he took it on for himself. Yeah.
Oh, right on. And so the culture in your household, was it very tied to a traditional Mexican culture?
Yes, 100%. My parents are very traditional, culturally, obviously, but I think also super strict, which isn't uncommon, probably for Mexican parents. But they were very loving parents. They were involved. Yeah, so my household was a very traditional Mexican household. My parents were very strict, like a lot of Mexican parents are. But, it was traditional in the sense of my mom stayed at home. She was the homemaker. My dad worked and provided for the family. They definitely did value education, even though they didn't have it themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very traditional household, I would say.
What sort of things you remember as a child that they brought as far as traditions or culture to the U.S. with them?
So, Spanish was actually my first language. So little Anna spoke Spanish. And I think I mentioned earlier, when I started in school, it was predominantly Spanish. Yeah. So when I went to school living in LA, my teacher spoke Spanish. That's all I knew. That was a big part of my childhood. Other things that my parents, I would say, brought with them was the foods. Everything that we ate was pretty much homemade meals for my mom, right? So it was that, and it was just like respect for your elders and respect for your family and being humble and working hard. Like my dad is just to this day such a like hardworking man. He's just very helpful. Anyone ever needs anything, he's always there. So I think those were some of the things that my parents, you know, kind of instilled in us as kids growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those are great values. You know, those are great values to have. Did you? So obviously, you said you grew up and went to school where it was predominantly Latino, Latinx, Latina. Yeah. So you probably didn't right away feel that get the impression that like maybe you were an outsider, or was that already forming from like, oh, there were like Mexican kids that, you know, their families are from the United States, and then there are immigrant families. Is that something that you can recall from being that young or being younger?
Actually, and it's exactly what you said, because living in LA initially and going to school out there, so many people spoke Spanish. It wasn't something that I felt like I was an outsider at all.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And even for my parents, like they could communicate with my teachers and the school administrators. But it wasn't until third grade when we moved to this new city where school looked very different. My teachers no longer spoke Spanish. And so that is where the barriers kind of started, where I had to kind of step up my game at school, because I knew that coming home I wasn't going to have an adult that could do homework with me, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't understand it. So that, I think, was where I started to experience that difference in the language and the cultures too.
Do you remember the first time you either saw white kids or other, you know, quote unquote American kids either with something or doing something that you wanted to do that might not have fit what your parents would either let you do, or, you know, I remember talking to one person about like her parents were like, "What's Halloween, man? Like that's just strange. Like you dress up." And
Yeah. No, we celebrated Halloween, but yeah, I remember it was probably in third grade. It was when I started at this new school in this new city, and you know, there were less kids that looked like me. And so that is when I started to feel a little bit different. Like my family looks different than their family. Maybe the snacks that they would bring to school. I remember that. I mean, it's so funny now because I think that just came to mind right now. I don't know if I talked about that before. But I remember, like, you know, snacks that they would bring look different than the snacks my family would get at the Mexican grocery store.
Yeah,
so it was like little things like that I started to pick up on when I was like in third grade that I hadn't noticed up to that point.
Yeah. And so you said, you know, obviously you're moving somewhere it's predominantly, you know, sounds like it's more white or non-BIPOC, you know. And so were you speaking really any English previously at the school, or was there all of a sudden you're kind of like thrown into the deep end of the pool and now all of a sudden everything is in English?
Yes, it was that. And
oh, wow.
It's interesting because I remember starting in third grade and all of a sudden, like, I was being paired with like a ESL language person that would help me in class. And I honestly don't know. It's like a switch went off. Like I didn't speak it and then I did. I just picked it up. Like, quickly, I guess, because I don't even remember struggling with learning English when I was a kid or anything like that. I just remember I didn't speak it and then I did.
Yeah. So, and did your siblings also too?
My older sister. Yeah, it was the same for her. My younger sister and my younger brother, they started when we, you know, they were born in the new city that we moved to.
Oh, so okay.
So for my older sister, it was the same experience as mine.
And this is jumping ahead a little bit, but do you feel their experience is different than your experience growing up?
Yes, and actually, my older sister and I, we joke about it all the time. We're like, they're different. They're the different siblings. I feel like our parents were much more strict with us, especially like she probably got the worst of it, but my parents were so strict with us, and then it seems like by the time our younger siblings went to high school, it was like, what happened to all the rules? What happened?
Yeah.
So I think their experience was different.
Yeah. Do you recall your parents, or have you talked to them since about the idea of them running into any negativity about them being immigrants, being in the United States? Or
I do remember like just small things that, my dad probably experienced when he worked for different people years ago when I was a kid. But now, just in recent, weeks and the past month or so, I have talked to my parents, like, they are very involved in their church. So I kind of felt like I went into a protective mode, like making sure people had information, and knew how to advocate for themselves.
Do you recall places, like where you learned English besides school? Like, was there music that you were interested in or TV shows that were?
Yeah, I would say it was definitely TV. I just remember like all the shows we would watch. I would pick up different things just from the kid shows we would watch when we were younger. But it's funny because the majority of TV at home was actually in Spanish, which is probably why I'm so dramatic now. Watching all of those novelas. But yeah, it's probably just from TV. Oh, and another thing I would probably say is with neighbors, like hanging out with neighborhood kids.
Oh, yeah.
So we would just learn from them just in conversation.
Yeah, I was going to ask, just nice transition into like, what was your friend pool like when you made the transition?
Yeah. So coming to this new city as a kid, I think my first couple of friends I made did speak Spanish, actually. They did. But then throughout the years, it was just like a mixed bag. It was different people with different backgrounds. Not all of them spoke Spanish necessarily, but the first couple that I made as close friends, one of them I actually still am friends with to this day. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Our high school was actually very mixed. It's interesting because where we live, there's certain high schools that are not as mixed and others that are, just, obviously depending on where you are. But the one that I went to was probably one of the most mixed high schools out here, actually.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Did you ever struggle with your identity in relationship to your ethnic background?
Struggle.
Like, I wish I was like little Katie over there, like, why was I born into this family? The things that sometimes kids will say.
I think certain things, like as a kid, I did sometimes feel like, man, I wish I could do that. And one of them actually was like, again, my parents were so strict that my friends would invite me to like sleepovers or like, certain things that I couldn't do. I wasn't allowed to. It was not something my parents were comfortable with. So things like that, I do remember to this day just feeling like, why didn't I get to do those things? Like, why? But overall, no, I don't feel like I had, specific things that I felt like deprived in necessarily. Yeah. Because I was, Mexican.
But did your mom, was there a sense of like, oh, culturally, like, Anna, like, women in our culture, we just don't do that, Yeah,
and it's like not even just women, but it's like, no, you can't do that because, we don't know, you never know. And in Spanish, parents will say, uno nunca sabe. So it's always my parents just always felt like certain things were off limits, right? You're not going to sleepovers. So you kind of learn over time, I'm not going to ask because I'm not allowed to. It was more of a trust thing. Not of me, but of like other people that they didn't feel necessarily comfortable about letting me go anywhere.
Do you remember your parents being like having a big like building a big social group and when they moved, or did you travel back down to LA where you lived and that's where your parents' established friends were at?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of both actually. So we had family both in LA and then we had family here in this city that we moved to. So my parents still kept in touch with a lot of their friends in LA, and we would go there like anytime there's parties, right? It's this big thing. So I remember we would go back and forth during the weekends and stuff.
Yeah.
And out here, though, they did establish, a lot of friendships and just even with our family that lived out here. So I feel like we always had an active social life growing up with like family and friends, and yeah.
And we were talking a little bit before we got on the mic about education. And, you said your parents didn't force you technically in a way to say, hey, like you have to do this. Yeah. What was that like growing up? When you, and what kind of a student were you?
Yeah. So let's see. My parents, I'll share this before I go into that, but my parents, neither of them graduated high school. Like that just, in their upbringing, they didn't really get to go to school like that.
Yeah.
So they always saw education like a privilege.
Yeah.
And they were always super supportive, even though they themselves didn't go very far into their education. They always supported myself and my siblings getting an education. We all went to college, got degrees. But as far as what kind of student I was a great student, Antonio. I was a great student. I'm proud of that. Yeah, and I'll say that going back to like a comment I made earlier about how, growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of help at home when it came to schoolwork and things like that, just because of like the language and the education barriers. I think it really shaped me into being, I tend to be an overachiever. And on top of that, I tend to be, a lot of us are probably, but really critical of myself. And I think it comes from growing up and feeling like in order to be good, I have to work at 120% all the time in everything I do. So I carried that through all of my, high school years and going into college. Like it was this thing that I felt like I have to continue achieving. And yeah, it came from that, just this feeling of, it's really up to me to make it happen, because I'm not going to have my parents that I can have guide me through it like some people do.
What was driving you think? Besides just that innate, like, was there anything you're like, this is what I want to do? And
yeah. Well, I'm a Leo. No, I'm kidding. No, but what was driving me, I think, really just always feeling like if my dad and my parents really could come to this country, not speak the language, have so many barriers, and still make a decent life for themselves and for my siblings and I, then I have no excuse.
Yeah.
Like that's this constant thing. I need to just accomplish as much as I can, right?
Yeah.
My skill sets and my gifts and whatever else I have, I can do, big things. And it's almost like a wanting to make my parents proud. And feel like that's my way of giving back to them for all of it. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. No, I can understand that. The idea, I won't say that we felt we had that guilty feeling too, but it was probably there definitely, if I don't do something, then they've wasted, this journey that they took, So how did you figure things out then, around college? Like, what did that look like for you? Especially, this is something where you can also provide, help to other individuals who might have parents, immigrant or not, or other, like that just didn't go to college, did not promote college, don't know it's just not in the household. So share how that worked out for you.
Yeah, so much I could say about this. So I'll say that for me, I didn't necessarily have like a role model that had the educational background or like the career path that I was aspiring towards. But I did have like teachers and counselors at school that did provide some of that guidance. I feel like there probably was much more that I could have done, but that's just me again being critical. But I think for me, it was just figuring it out as I went.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like this clear plan that was laid out for me. And here's how you apply for college, and here's how you get scholarships. And I didn't have that. You know? So now knowing that, I think I see all of the different possibilities out there, especially for kids that are now in the same shoes I was in. So the difference I would say, which this is one of the reasons I personally love social media for this reason, that have so many people out there that can inspire you and that share all of these resources and tools. And I think it's finding someone who has done it, who has gone through that path already, who can teach you or who you can learn from, but not settling for this is just the way it is. I feel like in some ways, like I kind of settled, and I think that there's so much out there that you really don't have to settle. Like if there's
what do you mean by you kind of settled? What does that mean exactly?
I feel like, I mean, my goal out of high school was to be a doctor. And that was like my plan. That was what I was going to do. But, you know, just things changed in my life. And, you know, I had kids really young and, well, not really young. We were 21. But I had my daughter when I was 21. And so that kind of changed the trajectory of the rest of my decisions because now I was a mom. But I think, you know, settling in a sense of like maybe not pushing myself as much as I could have to find other resources and not taking that like no as a final no. It could have just been like maybe not right now or maybe not on this path, but on this one. And yeah,
that's great. No, totally. It's, I was going to ask, you know, was the idea of still being a doctor, like, was it just automatically gone once you're like, oh, I'm going to have a child? Or was it something that at one point you were like, oh, it's a lot of work and I'm not going to be able to balance both right now?
I think it was a few things. One of them was, you know, getting married young and having my daughter young and what all of that, you know, would mean and how things would have to change because of that.
Yeah.
But the other part of it too was that I realized, like, is that actually a career I can do? Like, cut out for it. Not intelligence wise or like willing to work hard enough for it, but more so what the job itself would entail. I got to the point where I was like, is that going to bring me the type of happiness I would want in my life for myself personally? And there were just other things that I was passionate about too that I was like, well, maybe I'm going to explore that other option instead. So I did like probably 3 different like pivots in my educational career, but that's just how I am. You know, I am someone who is like a lifelong learner. You know me, Antonio. I'm creative and I'm someone who's like super passionate. So if I have this idea, I'm like, well, I want to try that. Like, I want to see, can I actually do that? And that's kind of what happened as I was going through school and just having these different changes in my life happening.
Did you share any of like early on? I want to be a doctor. You tell your parents this, and what was their reaction? Or did you share like what you kind of imagined that you wanted to be, or you were pursuing in school in those early days with your parents, and what did those conversations look like?
I think I didn't get like the idea again because I had so many ideas to become a doctor probably until like my junior senior year. I was like, I think that's something I would want to do.
What did you go in for?
I wanted to be a pediatric oncologist, and
Right on.
I wanted to work at St. Jude's, and I wanted to like help people. Like that was
Yeah.
And then, later on I was like, can I actually handle that kind of job? Like, is that going to be, too much? And, but I didn't actually like have super deep conversations with my parents about that being my lifelong dream or anything.
Yeah.
They were always just supportive of whatever we wanted to pursue, and just, making sure that we wanted to do something with our lives. And they never really like pressured us into going into a specific career path or to a specific college. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah, it's something you said early on about your dad. You could remember he had so many different jobs,
Yeah.
And I think about that. I think about, people that I know here from, not just Mexico, Latin America, but all over the world that come here and they pick up like work and they learn it. Like, it's like, wow, like this person's building a house and like, oh, they were, they worked on motorcycles when they were living in, Russia or whatever, so it's pretty crazy. Like, but I think that's kind of the difference, I think, between like Latinx culture, and some other cultures where, you'll hear cultures say, oh, you have to be a doctor, an engineer, or other things. But there's this interesting thing within, it's just get an education. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes they might not, I'm like wondering now, it's like, my dad, did he even understand? Like, I think he understood philosophically what it meant to have a degree or what a degree might get you, but did he know? I don't think he went past 7th grade, so yeah, it's cool. That's awesome. And so then you are in college. Like really quick, were you doing any type of things related to any Mexican groups, Latinx groups, anything like that? Or
so in my high school, we had a club, and it was called the Latino Club. I was involved in that, and we used to do like different like fundraisers, and I'll say it was a lot more of like the fun aspects of the culture. It wasn't like super deep, like, but it was more just like creating community amongst like the Latino students. So I was a part of that during, I think, like the majority of my high school years.
Right on. And did you feel that at any one point in your teen college years that you were pulling away from some of the traditions that your parents kind of had instilled in you, or just, I mean, did you just continue to nurture those as an adult? Because they were around, right? Like, I mean, not like, they were in the same city, or you were living with them. So
yeah. No, I think, I don't think I was like super rebellious kid either.
Yeah.
So I feel like once I graduated high school, I was very focused and like, I need to get through my education, get into like my career as quickly as I can, which is kind of funny now that I think about it, because you graduate high school and you're still a kid.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had this unnecessary pressure on myself to just get through all of that as quickly as I could. But my parents, like, I think they were just supportive. Like, there wasn't anything that they put a ton of pressure on me for, really, other than like, there's rules. You can't have sleepovers. But no, even in like initially right out of high school, I went to a community college, because that was one of the things where it was like, I'm not ready to move away from home, and I don't want to spend all of this money. And so I went to community college and I was working. So that was just like what my life consisted of for the first couple of years. But yeah, I don't think there was anything where my parents were like, oh no, what are you doing? Because I wasn't out there like having I would say like what a lot of people consider their normal college life. That wasn't my experience.
Yeah. And so, to talk about, you mentioned you had a child, a daughter, at 21, and,
Yeah.
we're going to talk a little bit about your children are mixed race, multiracial. So tell us a little bit about your children.
So, before I tell you about the kids, I will tell you, just as you probably picked up on, I tend to be an overachiever, including getting married at 19, because that was just the thing to do, apparently.
Yeah.
But so my partner and I, we've been together forever, like almost 20 years this year.
Wow.
So don't do the math. But we have two kids. And so we had our daughter when we were 21, and then our son a few years after that. And our kids are triracial. So they are Mexican from my side of the family, and then their dad is Black and Filipino. So they're this really cool mix, like beautiful melting pot of like different races and cultures.
With that culturally in the house, what is the household like as far as cultural or tradition, or even like, oh no, this is just really Americanized,
Yeah, it's a whole mix of everything.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I did not teach my kids Spanish when they were little, and it wasn't because I didn't want them to learn it. In my mind, because my parents babysat my kids when they were little, I just figured they'll pick it up, like in conversation, the way I did.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. So I think my kids should speak 3 languages because their grandma speaks Tagalog, but they don't. They understand it. However, in the household, like, we incorporate all different parts of their culture. Like, they are very familiar with Mexican traditions and with hearing Spanish anytime my parents and my family are around. And then with their grandma, they're very familiar with her cooking and with her culture and her traditions. And I think it's just, we haven't, and it's not that we don't try, but it's not like we're intentionally trying to like make them learn certain things or pick up certain things. It's more just like a part of them experiencing it as they get older.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. Do you think that it should be like, you feel like the way that you're doing it right now, not that it's not working, but do you feel like, oh yeah, maybe we should introduce them more to, like, hey, read this book about the Philippines, or are they curious at all?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think we could be more intentional about it. They are definitely curious. I think my daughter, now that she's in high school, she is much more leaning towards, I want to speak Spanish, and she does actually.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I think that, yes, we could do more of it. And at the same time, they are also kind of gravitating towards different parts of their culture on their own. Just by us introducing them to things. Like music, for example. I'll play like Spanish music around the house. Yeah. And then I'll hear my daughter playing a song in her room and it's in Spanish. And she's
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
It's like that, where although I do wish that we would have taught them, all of their different languages when they were kids, I think now they're still making their way and gravitating towards those things on their own.
Yeah. Do you think that the way your parents raised you, how's that affected the way you've raised your children? You said it was pretty strict. So I know parenting is a two-party thing, a two-person thing, So, but more from your background, how's that going?
So I'll just say I have a newfound appreciation for my parents and how they were strict, but they always were strict for the right reasons and they had the best intentions. Now that I have a high schooler, I totally get it. I think it has affected like my parenting, and my partner and I, he actually, we see eye to eye on the way we parent our kids. There isn't really anything that is like, oh no, we have to do it this way, or we just kind of agree with how to parent our kids, even though he's not Mexican.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that I feel I've carried over from the way I was raised to how I'm raising my kids. I'm not as strict as my parents or with me. There are certain things where I'm like, I understand the reason why things are the way they are, and I think this is the best way to do it. But at the same time, because I know that in some ways that super strictness can limit like your connection with your kids. I've been much more intentional, and this I'm very proud of. I'm actually very close with my kids. I'm very intentional about creating or doing my best to create a safe space for them. You don't have to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. I can only like give you advice, and you have to make choices for yourself. But I definitely make it a point to let them know if you ever need anything, if you're ever in trouble, if you ever make a mistake, like still come to us first as your parents. And even if it's not something we're going to be happy about, we're going to help you figure it out.
Yeah.
I think
that's
that
great.
Was difference.
And do you feel, that in contrast with the way that your parents were raised, do you feel like you had like this open door with them to like talk about things, or was it like
with my parents?
Yeah.
No, and it's not. It's funny because it's not because I didn't feel loved or supported by them. I did.
Sure.
I did. I also just felt like the communication was very different with my parents than how I am with my kids. And there were certain things where it was like, well, no, I don't want to talk to them about that. Like, we just didn't feel comfortable. And I think it was just different. Maybe also because it's like they grew up in a much different, childhood than what they were providing for me. And so I don't feel like we could relate as much, I guess.
Where do you go to deal with problems, whether it's, meditation or therapy or other things? And when you're in those spaces, do things come up like, oh, wow, like that was like, that was the way it was because of the culture I grew up in. Yeah. Like the hardworking thing. I learned that my therapist kept telling me, that's a culture thing, man. Like you gotta, Yeah.
And you know what? That's such a good question, Antonio, because I think when I was going to therapy, I was seeing this really good therapist. She just had such a good way of like connecting with me and just getting me to think about things that I hadn't even thought of before.
Yeah.
But one thing that she got me to like identify from my childhood and from my relationship with my mom was I remember always feeling like my mom was super critical of me. Again, she's like excellent mom, like the best woman ever, I would say. And she's just a great person. So I felt like my mom loved us so much, but she was kind of brutally honest and very critical at times.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like this like soft parenting kind of thing with her. And I always felt like, well, gosh, like you're always tearing me down. That's not nice. But then I realized, and I think this came from like my therapy from a couple of years ago, I started to think about like, well, what was my mom's childhood like?
Yeah.
What was her relationship with her mom like? And my mom was actually one of 14 kids growing up in Mexico. She's one of the younger of the 14. So she was pretty much raised by her older siblings.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment, like a light bulb went off. Well, no wonder she, parents the way she parents. And not that it's a bad thing, but she was raised by her siblings. Like she didn't have that relationship with her mom necessarily.
Yeah.
And so that just made me like think of it in such a different way and really have so much more grace for her. Like, it's not that she's a bad person by any means. It's just she's shaped the way she's been shaped by her own experiences too.
Yeah, that's great. So your kids, have they had that experience yet? And have you had to have conversations with them about being triracial, multiracial? Like, where do I fit in? Has that come up at all?
It has with my daughter a couple of different times, but The first one was when she was younger. Like when she was like 8 or 9 years old, she used to like say that she wished she looked like me. Or she would actually ask me, she's like, "Do you wish you had a daughter that looked like you?" And I would always be
Oh.
like, "What do you mean? You do look like me." And she'd say, "Well, no, you and daddy are, or me and daddy are black and you and brother are white." And then I
Oh,
would explain to
wow.
her,
Wow.
like, "Well, actually, no, you are Mexican, Filipino, and black, and
Yeah.
look the way you look because, you're mixed."
Yeah.
And so when she was younger, I think she would notice that a lot more. But
Yeah.
now that she's in high school, like she fully embraces all of her different races. She has such like high self-esteem, and she's just like so happy in her own skin, which I love to see that. I'm like, this is exactly as it should be.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But she has made comments where people have said certain things at school, like, "Well, you only identify with this specific group," or "No, you're not Mexican," or they'll be shocked if she tells them, "I'm Mexican." They're like, "No, you're not." So for her, it has happened. For my son, actually, now that you bring it up, yeah, he actually will make comments that his friends tell him that he's not black.
Oh, interesting.
He's
Yeah.
not as dark,
Yeah.
And so I think they've both experienced it like in little comments like that with their peer groups. So yeah, they have.
And have you guided them on how to address that? Like,
I have. I've tried
Yeah.
my best, at least. For my daughter, I feel like now she kind of speaks up for herself. So
Yeah.
she's like, "I can just, say what I need to say," and she doesn't take like offense to it or anything. She just says, "No, yeah, I am. Like, my parents are this and that." And my son, I think I have to like kind of more gently like guide him to how to respond to stuff like that, because he can be a little timid. So for my son, because he's younger, I do give him, ways to navigate those conversations, and even just reassuring him, like, you don't have to look a certain way to
yeah.
be, identified in your own race. People think that, some people feel that way, but, for you, that is who you are, whether or not you look the way that people want you to look.
Yeah, for sure. That's like a mic dropper right there. Right? So is there anything as far as like your family construct, you and your partner and your kids, that you feel, has anyone ever asked you things that are more myths about mixed families, multiracial families?
Trying to think. Well, it wasn't so much a question. It was just a comment that someone made to me once, and I was like, "That's so funny." So, because my kids look different, they're very different. They're very interesting, right? My daughter looks just like her dad, and my son looks, which some people think he looks like his dad too, but just not lighter. I've had someone tell me that they thought my kids had different dads.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. I was like, "What's wrong with that?" But
Yeah.
it's just, I think people tend to expect your family to look like a certain way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect example where, it just looks the way it looks, and some people don't necessarily look at things the same way. Yeah.
Do you feel like your family construct with, you and your partner and kids, affects like groups you hang out with, like other families? Oh, do you hang out with other mixed families, or is
Not so much. I think we hang out with everyone.
Yeah.
I think we just, I haven't even thought of that. No. I think it's just, it has a lot to do with like whoever our kids are friends with, and then we'll, become friends with their parents or hang out with their parents and things like that. But I wouldn't say it affects it so much. No.
Yeah. And so as a parent, what lessons do you hope your child will carry forward, as far as, inclusivity? Are you feel like your kids already kind of understand that? being triracial, mixed race, that like, oh, like, I don't, not that they have a duty, but that it's a different experience, and it almost gives them a leg up to be like ahead of individuals who are just either identify as like one thing or the other.
Yeah, I think for that, I'd say I would just want them to be proud of their different cultures and represent their different cultures, whether or not people identify that, people who don't know them identify them as such, like still take pride. You are Mexican, even if people don't believe that you look Mexican, or you are Black, even if people don't believe that you look that way. So I think just taking pride and, doing as much as they can to embrace and learn about their culture, I think is super important.
Yeah.
And continuing myself as their parent to share those things with them too.
Yeah, it's good. No, it's awesome. I mean, I appreciate you sharing the earlier instances where they did recognize that, but it sounds like also just your parenting style has worked well to help them embrace their whole selves, which is super important, even though they recognize that they are, a combination of multiple cultures, and, it's tough being mixed race, when sometimes, and it sounds funny, like when you find out later in life, oh, wait a second, I'm mixed race, and it finally hits you because you've either grown up like I did in like an all white culture, So, but I think it's, your kid, I mean, the world, especially in the LA area, even out in the burbs now, is definitely much more mixed. So, I do, whether this is, I keep this, but I do, like, if I wish your partner was here because I could ask more of those questions, but it's like,
back and I'll bring him along.
Yes, yeah. And so I'm going to wrap up with this. I ask every guest, what's your recipe for world peace?
Yes. Okay. I really like this question. So I'm going to borrow from a book that I'm reading right now, actually, by Dale Carnegie. And he shares in the book that instead of condemning people, we should try to understand them. And I think that is so perfect, especially right now. But really always, right? If everyone kind of took that approach and not be so reactive or, narrow-minded in a sense, but try to actually understand each other more, I think we could have much healthier conversations. Yeah. And still disagree, but at least have respect and empathy for each other. No, that's beautiful. And I, something I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm just going to ask you, throw it over the fence, is, do you think that there is something that we might fear in being curious or being open-minded, that we talk to people that we might consider the other, or however we look at them or classify them, that we then end up shying away from those conversations because of a fear of, oh, maybe those people are like me. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, do you think that there's an innate fear around that? I think so. I think some people, we probably all fear change to an extent, but also just a fear of the unknown. And rather than leaning into that and getting curious, we tend to shy away from things like that sometimes. And I do think some of it could be that maybe if you lean into it and you see, hey, this isn't actually bad. Like, I shouldn't feel a negative way about this. I think it might be more than some people can handle or want to handle. But yeah.
It takes work, right? Like, I was going to say, I'm really into the whole idea of like the unlearning of things. And is there anything in your from your childhood and the way your parents raised you against the culture that they grew up in that you feel like you've had to unlearn as an adult to become the empowered woman that you are?
I feel like sometimes culturally, like Mexican people tend to feel that in order for you to be humble, like you have to fit in this box and be like quiet and be, you have to always like tiptoe around other people's feelings and not advocate for yourself or not come across as like abrasive. And I think that's something I've had to unlearn. Like, it's okay to have a voice.
Yes.
And you are worthy. You deserve to take up space. And I think that's been a big thing for me, like not feeling like I'm not deserving to be in a room with other people.
Yeah.
So I would say that.
Yeah. And if you met somebody, somebody else who's Mexican that, has ever tried to remind you like, oh, this is how like we are culturally, like, why aren't you acting like that? One thing that came up in a group that I was in a lot with Latina women was the idea of it all of a sudden clicked with how much they were caretakers / they always were the ones waiting on the men. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, so I don't do that.
There you go.
And it's so funny because he'll jokingly sometimes tell me, he's like, "Are you gonna make my plate?" It's a joke, and there's do that for their partner. We just don't like.
Yeah.
We are pretty equal when it comes.
He takes good care of you from what you said. He takes good care of you.
Person.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Antonio. And
I'd love to, I actually would love to do get a family on here, or, I'm working on getting a couple. It's always like one or the other is hesitant to, because I don't want people to come on here and start fighting and then end up getting divorced, So anyway, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Huge shout out to my friend Johannes Skoda for mixing and creating the intro music, and DJ Kazam for the track.